Hi, welcome to Naresh IT. This is Sai. In this today's session, we are going to discuss about what are the internal flow of the statement interface and what are the drawbacks of working with the statement interface. We'll see in this today's session. So let's see the internal flow of statement interface. As of now, in the previous sessions, we've seen about how to perform database transactions using statement interface and how to submit a dynamic SQL query to the database using statement interface. We understand up to now. Now let's see here the internal flow actually here. This is what your Java application. So my Java application, and here we have a JDBC driver, connected driver, and here your database, MySQL database or some database, whatever it may be. So once the Java application submits a SQL query using statement interface to the JDBC driver, internally your JDBC driver submits that query to the SQL database. Any type of database is general operation. Whenever if we are using a statement interface, once at the time of submitting SQL query to the database, what happens internally means our database first validates your query, means checking whether your query is written according to the SQL grammar or not. If SQL is also having some grammar or rules are there. Whatever the SQL query you submitted, is that query is well formed query or not. That means it followed based on the syntax rules or not. If everything is fine, then what this that means your database will do means it compiles the query. Compiling the query means converting that query into internally the pseudocode format, converting that SQL query into pseudocode format. That is nothing but compilation. Pseudocode is just like internal database understandable code instructions, and it prepares a build plan for that query. How to execute that SQL query, that process is nothing but a build plan. And once that build plan process is completed, using that build plan, it performs operations on your database table records. Once the build plan process is completed, it performs operations on database table records actually. That is a concept. So these are the internal flow once the query is submitted. So you can see here, once query submitted using statement interface, you can see here validating query, that is what, checking query based on standard rules, compiling query, that is check converting into pseudocode format or internal database code instructions, prepares a build plan for the query, that is using database own algorithms, process build plan to perform operations on database. Finally, it destroys build plan and returns response back to the JDBC driver. So this is about what we discussed up to now, the internal flow of the statement interface. Once a query submitted using statement interface, these are the operations which was done internally by your database engine. Any type of database, not only MySQL database, any type of database, it is performing the same level of internal operations actually here. So validating the SQL query is nothing but that is checking the query based on standard rules, checking SQL query based on the standard rules, compiling the SQL query, that is converting into the pseudocode format or internal database code instructions. So once the query is compiled, internally database converts that query into internal pseudocode instructions. Pseudocode means some database internal standard code instruction format actually. It prepares a build plan for that query, that is using database own algorithms, build plan, how to execute the query. Finally, it processes a build plan to perform operations on database. Finally, it destroys build plan and returns response back to the JDBC driver. This story is repeated every time whenever if we submit SQL query to the database using statement interface. Now coming to the point here, if we see the earlier program, that is in our last session, what the program we discussed, if I show that program there, you can see once after establishing the connection, see in the while loop what we are doing here, we are asking enter employee ID, employee name, then see we prepared an SQL query by injecting your employee ID and name dynamically for this query. Then after that we are submitting st.execute update. So you are submitting that SQL query to the driver and the driver submit that SQL query to the database. So once the query is submitted to the database, internally our database engine follows all these steps. So what is the problem is, until you give the keyboard condition as false, that means if I say true every time, our while loop is iterated. Whenever if I say to insert another record true, again the loop is iterated. It means again we are taking the new employee ID and new employee name. If you observe here in this code, insert query remains same only, but your data remains changed, employee ID and name. This data remains changed every time, but query remains same. But in this case, our database engine is not intelligent to find out whether it is a new query or existing query. That is a drawback in the statement interface. So whenever if we are submitting the same SQL query more than one time, multiple times, our database engine cannot find whether it is a new query or existing one. That means the story is started from beginning again. Even though if we are submitting a same query again, our database engine start the process from beginning, validating the query, compiling the query, converting into the pseudocode. All these steps are repeated every time whenever if we are submitting a same query again and again, more than one time. So in this program, again the while loop is iterated number of times based on the condition true. Every time your insert query, insert into employee values, that query only we are submitting multiple times. So in this scenario, the database load is increases. Whenever database load is increases, the same load is reflected on your application also, means in your Java program. So Java program performance is reduces. That is a problem. That means whenever if we want to submit a same SQL query more than one time, multiple times, means same query but data is changed dynamically. In this scenario, we are advised to go for another alternate interface called prepared statement. Our JDBC API introduced that instead of statement. That is one of the drawback here. We understand what was the primary drawback. Whenever if you are submitting a same SQL query more than one time, every time our database engine start the process from the beginning, validating the query onwards every time. So this story increases more load on your application that affects the performance of your program. So that is one of the problems. Second problem is the string concatenation process. Because of this plus operator here, concatenation process increases a load on your application. In the string concatenation process, concatenation means merging the strings. Suppose for example, if I say like, suppose I would like to concat NIT plus Java. If I say like this, NIT plus Java. Whenever double quotes is encountered, one string object is created internally. In that string object, this content NIT is stored. Again, what this plus operator will do, it concates your Java with NIT. Before concatenating Java with NIT, for this double quotes Java, one string object is created. Later on, these two string objects are merged together, that is NIT content and Java content, both are merged, and finally we'll get a new string object, NIT Java, because you know string is immutable concept here. So that is the point what you need to understand. The content cannot be changed. In the concatenation process, every time the string objects are created inside a special memory called the string constant pool memory. It was under your JVM only. Every time before creating a new string object, our JVM verifies whatever the content you given in the double quotes, is that content is matched with any of the existing string object in the constant pool memory or not. First it will confirm. So whenever if the content is not matched to any of the existing string object in the constant pool memory, then the JVM creates a new string object with the content NIT. Similarly for Java also, same story. So before concatenation process, that means at the time of creating a string object, our JVM verifies whether this content is matched with any of the existing string object or not. If it is matched, it uses that existing string object only. It doesn't create a new one. In the string constant pool memory, there is no duplicate objects. Remember that point. So this process increases a more amount of load on your application that affects the performance of your program. This is one of the second drawback in the statement interface. That means whenever if we are preparing a dynamic SQL query, always you must use a string concatenation process for injecting the data dynamically into the query. Without using the plus operator, we are not allowed to inject the data into the query. Plus operator increases more amount of load because of this merging the string object, and unnecessary string objects goes to garbage collection. This process increases more amount of load. This is the second problem. Third problem is your SQL query is not a secure query whenever if we are using a plus operator, because attacker can easily hijack your query. Your query whenever if you transfer over the network. Of course, right now my database is also there in my same machine. But in your real time, that means once if you enter into any of the software company, database runs in another machine. Your software runs in another machine to balance the load. In that scenario, you need to transfer the query from one machine to another machine over the network. In that scenario, your hijacker, that means your attackers of the network, can easily steal your query. Easily, that means easily stealing the query means they can add conditions to the query by using plus operator. They hack the query. Hacking means what? Additionally, they will add some extra conditions to the query to pull up some amount of data by using plus operator. Using plus operator, you can add n amount of data. You can merge the strings, right? So there is no security for your SQL query. So that is a problem here. So easily we can store the data with the help of this query. That's why we are not encouraging to work with a statement interface because of these problems only. So in order to overcome these problems, JDBC introduced an interface called prepared statement interface. That is a point what you need to understand here. So when to go for this statement interface means, statement interface is used generally for submitting a static SQL query, means a query which doesn't contain a data to be changed frequently. And if we want to submit that SQL query only one time in the entire execution of the program, in that scenario also we are going to work with a statement interface. And also from one statement interface we can submit n number of SQL queries. That means, what is the meaning of this statement here? See, st dot execute update of SQL query. Now this SQL query variable contains insert into employee values, right? Not only this insert query, you can submit delete query or you can submit update query. Any type of query you can pass to this execute update method. That means on the same statement object you can submit any type of SQL query. That means no need to create a statement object separately for submitting other SQL queries also. That is also one of the benefit of the statement. So remember the point, in which situations we need to go for the statement interface in your project development is, if you want to submit a static SQL query, if you want to submit a SQL query only one time in the entire project execution, if you want to submit a different SQL queries from the same object, then in that scenario we have to go for this statement. Whenever if you want to submit a same SQL query more than one time with dynamic data, in order to provide security for the SQL query from the network hijackers, for that scenario we need to go for another alternate interface called a JDBC prepared statement interface. Okay. So that is about the points what you need to understand. Prepared statement interface is the advanced interface as compared to the statement. Prepared statement is a subtype of statement interface. So by using this prepared statement interface, you can submit SQL query dynamically without using the string concatenation process. So there is no plus operator concept here. Query becomes dynamic, but we are not using the plus operator. In prepared statement, we are using a question mark character in the SQL query. Question mark is just like a placeholder. How many number of question mark characters are there in the SQL query? Exactly, we need to submit that amount of data only, depends on the number of placeholders. So what was an advantage in this scenario? You can't add unwanted conditions to that query by using the plus operator. Your query becomes very secure, so strong. Then whenever if there is no plus operator concept, there is no concatenation process also. So load is reduced on your application. Query performance is very good as compared to the statement. So these are the points. First of all, what you need to understand, when to go for the statement and why we need to go for the prepared statement. These things we understand in this session. So in the next coming session, we are going to discuss about how to work with prepared statement interface. What are the syntax structure you need to follow to work with this prepared statement interface. Those points we'll see in the next session. Keep watching. Thank you.